a beat. We didn't have to wear masks. We didn't have to deal with any of the other stuff. We really didn't even have a problem that actually went on. It was like normal life. And where all the other kids that live around us, it was mass chaos. Kids run around the neighborhood all the time. Parents are trying to figure out how to not work to watch their kids, and our kids got actually educated during that. So to say that I am the only one that, because of that, I've been financially able to be able to do this is ridiculous, because it is not a choice that just me as somebody that has the ability financially to be able to make this decision. It should be any person in the state of Idaho that has kids should be able to make that decision for themselves on where they want to send their kids and what type of education they actually want to have their kids have. So for that, I'd say this should get your green light easy, and please pass this bill. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion. Good gentleman from 11.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. So to reflect the opinions and comments from the good gentleman from District 28, I echo many of those sentiments. I feel my main objection with this bill is that it takes the role of government out of its proper role and expands it into the sphere of privatized education and putting more control over that, and I have an issue with that. I feel like the bill is, I hate to use the words, but I feel like it's another type of a social welfare program. I don't feel that it's not that we don't have choice. I think that's a common misnomer. We have school choice. Parents have the ability to educate their children how they see fit with the funds that they have. And I get that it's more difficult for some than it is for others, and I totally respect that. But I don't feel like it's in the place of the government to let me rephrase. Parents should not have to go to the government and ask for permission to get their money back so that they can educate their kids with that money. I'm sorry. So I guess to conclude, I am voting no against this bill, and I'm sorry. The final point I'd like to make here is that the people that have been pushing the hardest for this bill are the lobbyists. I've received emails and calls from a couple of parents in my district and around the state who have they've expressed a desire to get this bill pushed through. Largely, the people that have raised objection to this bill are the homeschool parents. And I have received literally hundreds of emails of very respectfully crafted and individually tailored emails from homeschool families, as well as public school families all over the state of Idaho. And I have to respect the wishes of those people and honor the constituents who elected me. And I thank you for the time.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman 25.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend the good lady from 32 and all the sponsors on this bill, but I want to explain to you why I can't support it. This week, a supporter of the bill came to me and asked me, do you support school choice and House Bill 93? And I basically said, that's two questions. I support school choice, but I have a difficult time with House Bill 93. And so I'm going to explain to you some of the reasons why. Because I think it has some basic flaws the way it was drafted. We have choices in Idaho. We have many choices, and people that oppose a bill like this, generally speaking, say, well, what do you mean we need more choice? We have charter schools, home schools, we have open enrollment, we have private schools, and we have empowering parents grants. I've supported all those things, although I have some reluctance now on the empowering parents grants that we're doing. But we do not have an efficient way to allow families of low income to move their children from a public school or any of those other choices into a private school or an education plan of their choice. This bill will reimburse families that have already made the choice. Most of them are already in a private school. So we're talking about $50 million. Now, there is a limit in this bill that talks about that you have to qualify for some aspects of it to be under 300% of the poverty level. 300% of the poverty level for a family of 4 is $90,000. $90,000. And I'm going to, and of course, some of these might be families of 3, which would have a lower, but there could be some families of 6 or 8, and so the dollar amount goes up with that. And I don't have a problem with having some form of a means test, because I think that was a good decision by the sponsors of this. But we're talking about right now having about 17,000 private school students. Some people say it's 20, some people say it's a little less than that, but there's roughly 17,000. And many of these are average families. Many of these students are in families that are going to automatically qualify for a tax credit. They're already in a private school and they're automatically going to qualify. So we're not increasing those students into the program. And once the application period doesn't come to an end, but gets to a point, I can't remember the exact date, then it opens up to anybody that has income above 300%. And guess what? That's virtually every other private school student in the system. So I can't see us ever falling short of spending the $50 million. But then there's some other little problems. And I guess the point I want to make is this is not going to significantly increase the numbers of students that have never been able to afford a choice to make a choice. It's going to be mostly reimbursing families that have previously made a choice. Now, they can use the money for qualified expenses, and they provided in this an advance payment. And that's basically, it's not the exact words, but basically a student with 300% or below can get advance payment because they don't have any money to pay the first tuition to qualify for a tax credit. So they can get an advance payment. The problem is, nowhere in the bill does it say, do they pay it back? That same student family can use the advance payment and then qualify for a full $5,000 tax credit in that tax year, and then get that tax credit. But it doesn't require them to use that money to repay the advance. Now, if you're an employer and one of your employees comes to you and says, hey, I get paid in 2 weeks, but can I get an advance on my check? You know what that means. That means that you have to pay it back. It's going to come out of your check. Excuse me. In this case, there is no provision for that. So I had a nice conversation with another gentleman that's very supportive of this bill yesterday, and he says, oh, it's not an advance, it's a grant. And I said, well, it doesn't say it's a grant. You know, he says they don't have to pay it back. And I said, well, where in the fiscal note does it say there's $50 million in tax credits and in so many millions of dollars of advances? So I have a little bit of a problem with that. And I think it could have been technically written a little bit differently, but the advance payments is it's a good option if we're going to do this. But we might as well say it, they're a gift, they're a grant, it's something that's never going to be paid back. If we look at the numbers of students out there, private school students, there's roughly 17,000, as I mentioned. If we take half of those students, that might be a little high, but we took half of those students and said they're going to qualify for one of these tax credits. That's going to, at $5,000, that's $42.5 million. So that means that there's $7.5 million for everybody else. And we don't know how it's going to work out. And if it's passed, I hope it works out better than some of my numbers. But this is the most expensive way possible for us to get more kids into choice. Do we want to support choice? Or do we just want to give back to the families that have already made the choice some of our tax funds? Another flaw to the bill that I see, that's not a flaw, but it's something that I disagree with, is that a good idea is that we're going to have a survey made, and that every parent has to fill out a survey if they're going to qualify for a renewal. But why are we having our legislative services office do that? They're supposed to be helping the floor, helping the legislators with their work. It just seems like a misconnection to ask legislative service officers to do that. I can imagine if I walked up and I asked them, hey, I'm a legislator, I'm wondering, can you guys do this? And they'd probably want to say, yeah, we have the ability to do that. But should they be doing that is a question. That should be either the State Board of Education or the State Department of Education. I was told yesterday of the $50 million that $10 million was targeted for these advance payments. But I think that was in a prior version of a bill, but it doesn't exist anymore. So again, I'm not sure if the fiscal note, they can cap it at 50 million, but I'm not sure how the advance payments are covered. Why does this gain support? One of the things, it's simple. It's a very simple way to do school choice. I don't know of any other state that's ever started with a major school choice program by doing it this way, but it is a very simple way to do it. And I think we all want things to be as simple as possible. And the other reason a lot of people want it is because they can say, I voted for school choice. And so finally, I just want to say is I cannot support this flawed bill, and I'm going to probably be labeled as anti-choice. I've been labeled falsely before, and I can take the heat on that. But this doesn't allow more Idaho families to get more choice. This is mostly reimbursing existing families that have paid the money to get a tax credit back. So they can label me as they wish, but I will not give up, and I don't want you to give up on the possibility, because I support the idea of low-income families having a choice to have a way to pay for private school, just like we do with many other social-type programs that some people don't like social programs, but we do it with Medicaid, we do it in so many different ways to help low-income families. And I think we need to be doing something, but I can't support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the debate on the motion, the gentleman from 1.
I rise with a question.
Who is your question to, good gentleman?
The representative.
32.
32.
The good lady from 32 yield to a question.
The lady yields.
Lady yields.
I read, after reading the bill, what I don't understand, perhaps you could add some clarity, is the second year or year 5, and it's primarily, I'm a third child, so I'll say child number 2 or child number 3 comes along. Where does child number 2 or 3 fit into this request for payment or service into this? Because it looks like once the first child is in, regardless of their income, it's that choice period. Once the first one's in, I'll call that child a legacy child. But what about the second or third? What happens then?
Lady 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're right, birth order does not matter under this bill. I'm trying to find the exact language. Mr. Speaker, could he point me to the specific language?
Can the gentleman from District 1 point her to where you're coming up with your question, please?
Sorry, all I have is my talking notes here. I didn't write I'm sure somebody around here can tell us what paragraph and line it is.
Gentleman from 1.
Yes, sir.
When you were going through the bill, coming up with your question, can you give us a page number so we can go to where you come with the legacy comment, so we can figure out where we're at and be on the same page?
Sorry. Let me see if I can find it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the line.
Good lady from 32, then please answer.
Thank you, friends, for helping me. Page 3, line 9. It says, shall give priority status to applications from parents who received the credit in the first place. So birth order does not matter. If a family has received it, their children will receive priority, and we anticipate the bulk of those being below the 300% of federal poverty.
Thank you, lady. The gentleman from 1.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just summarize. And so it's once a family is in.
Mr. Speaker, does he have another question?
Gentlemen, do you have an additional question?
No, sir, and no, ma'am.
Okay, so you're going to debate the bill? Is that
Yes, debate against the bill, please.
The gentleman has the floor to debate the bill. Thank you.
After reading the bill and asking the question, my feeling is this bill really serves to be as wealth redistribution. I've heard got a lot of messages from home, got a few phone calls, but out on the trail, I also get a lot of comments from seniors that they're really tired of paying to educate someone else's kids. Now, while I don't agree with that, to me, this bill exacerbates that. So now, rather than the seniors in my area contributing to pay for our public education, they even pay on top of that. So personally, I'd rather see, if we're going to send $50 million back to our taxpayers, that we would do it in a different way. We could do it grocery tax, income tax, sales tax, or property tax. But I feel like this redistribution going to a relatively small population of our Idahoans really isn't right. It does serve as a subsidy, and I would also note, a number of years ago, our federal government sent a lot of people checks. I didn't get one, but I think many would say in our economy it really exacerbated our inflation. And I am concerned that if we inject $50 million into our education economy, what we do, we have a pretty good history around here of being pretty careful the way we spend money. One of those reasons is because we want to watch the inflation factors. In this case, we insert $50 million into a system, and I'm concerned. I have had a couple calls from home with people saying, hey, what's this going to do to my private tuition? They're already in there. You know, is it true that they'll just up the rates by 20%, 50%, or whatever? I can't answer that, but I certainly can say that I think they have a point. I'm aware that our federal government is actively working on this now, almost on a day-by-day basis. My feeling is we have a long session ahead of us. Some say till June, maybe July. I'm not really sure. But I do know that we have the mindset in here that we can move quickly. I've watched the speaker run the board and run this system well. And that is not sarcastic or cynical, sir. But my point is we can get a lot of stuff done relatively quickly. My concern is this issue really, I'm wondering if really this issue is ripe and that we've really sorted it all out. So to me, I think we're running a little too far ahead of schedule. You know, February and March have lots of time in them, April if need be, but anyway, I'm just concerned about that as well. So with that, I'm a red light on this one. Thank you.
For debate on the motion. Good gentleman, 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as the House Education Chair, a lot of people come up to me and they say, why is a legislator from a rural public school area would you support this bill? And that's a great question, and one that I've thought about a lot. And I think the representative, the good gentleman from one, maybe even indicated some of the reasons why I support this bill. Because the allegation is made that perhaps this bill's wealth redistribution, or I've even heard the term welfare used from time to time. The fact of the matter is that rural public schools cost more to run per student than urban public schools. I certainly hope that the implication wouldn't be made that me or my children have received wealth redistribution or welfare to be educated in a rural public school. You know, the idea that this choice or these private school opportunities aren't available in rural areas sometimes presupposes the notion that this is only because there isn't enough volume of demand in rural areas by number of students to generate that opportunity. But I would also assert to you that it may also be that there's maybe perhaps a greater satisfaction in rural public schools for the services that are given to their students, a greater cohesiveness. In my rural public school, my kids knew every one of the faculty members, knew the administrators on a personal basis. There was a connection there. There was an opportunity there that wasn't the same necessarily in an urban setting. I remember very clearly my freshman year in college when I sat down in the first class that had 900 students in it, coming from a high school that had 120 students in it. That dynamic is so different. It's so easy to become a face in the crowd. In those days, we used our social security number. We wrote them in our textbooks, and when I went to see my test score, it was listed by the social security number, not by my name. We wouldn't even think about doing those things nowadays. But it's so easy to become lost in the crowd. And when I think about the fact that I do need perhaps a little bit more funding in my rural public school than the urban setting, I also think that maybe I ought to be cognizant of those needs in those larger schools to students that fall through the cracks, that maybe aren't noticed on a daily basis because the ability or the capacity just isn't there in that type of a setting to recognize the need that the parents see when those kids come home from school and their needs aren't being met. And for those reasons, I see a cause to support this choice. And I appreciate the work of the sponsors and all the debate on both sides of this issue. I think they're all very valid points. But this is just another tool in the toolbox. It's not meant to solve all the choice questions, answer all the questions. It's just another option. So if we make an argument against this bill because it doesn't solve all the choice answers or provide all the answers, it's not intended to. It's another option. It's another choice, another tool that parents can use. And I appreciate the concerns and questions. I think they're legitimate. It's a debate that we need to have. But I hope that you'll consider that that this is something that is valid. It is a good option. And perhaps there will be other options come forward. I appreciate the dynamic educational choice opportunities that exist in our state, all of them. I think they're all moving us down the path that we need to go to, and I urge your support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. First debate on the motion. Gentleman 34.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. I received a message on my watch that said it's time to stand. So I'm standing. First, I'd like to express gratitude for the floor sponsors. Have deep respect for them. But I too would like to add my name to I care about every child's educational experience in Idaho, and I stand with some concerns. During the committee public hearing, I raised some questions about bringing in 2 state agencies into the education realm, with where they have probably little to no knowledge or experience. And the question I raised was what the audit looks like. When you look at and read through the bill, you first find on the bottom of page 1 that education will be provided by an accredited school or documented in a portfolio. And when I read that further down, the audit is to be kept just in case an audit is by the State Tax Commission. Now, when I read that, not only are we asking the State Tax Commission to audit qualified receipts, we're also asking them to audit a documented portfolio on students' growth. Again, to where they have little to no experience. After further study of the State Tax Commission, it is brought to my attention that 2% of the audits are done annually on tax returns. That's approximately 22,000 audits per year. Now think about that. Now we're asking them to expand that into the education of those that qualify for these public dollars to go to private schools. Furthermore, it's brought out that they would receive $125,000 one-time allotment of for costs of programming and coding, and reallocates 2 existing full-time positions. 2 full-time positions for a new program. Doesn't specify what the qualifications of these 2 positions or employees would need, and it doesn't show whether it be exclude those two employees would be exclusive to this new program. So the question still remains, if we're at 2% in the State Tax Commission on their audits, it raises the question of accountability. A well-designed program would include a robust oversight and clear reporting and proper funding for enforcement, of which none of this bill provides. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Idaho deserves better, and I would encourage your red light.
For debate on the motion, gentleman from 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really appreciate all the different input and debate we've seen today. There's a number of different perspectives to this very important issue. And I love that we also all represent our districts in very unique ways. In District 3, where I'm from, I actually worked on a school choice tax task force this past year. And it was really well attended, and we had a number of different ideas and thoughts. And I can tell you that in District 3, there is so many families that are longing for and want some sort of choice and some different options. And I think that's exactly what this bill does. I think that competition is extremely healthy in life. I think competition is healthy in every avenue. And I think that, with high seas raises all ships, right? And I think this will make our public school systems better. I think this will make our private school systems better. I think there will be a better outcome for our kids with this bill. I really appreciate the gentleman from 11 concerns and how he's representing his district, especially dealing with homeschoolers. I was homeschooled personally, and my wife and I have chose to homeschool our 6 children. And so we work in a number of different homeschool groups. And you're exactly right, there are a lot of folks that do not want any kind of intervention. But there's also a number of homeschool families that really want this. And there's other families that would like to homeschool that don't have that opportunity currently because of the financial burden. I think that this is a great solution, a very good option, and I would urge your green light. Thank you.
For debate on the motion, good gentleman from 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor to debate the motion.
Thank you. Good ladies and good gentlemen of the body, I'd like to talk a little bit about this bill and specifically about choice and competition. I'm a free market guy, and 2 of the pillars of free market economies are choice and competition. I say a lot, and you've probably heard me say it, and I apologize for saying something that you've heard me say before, but I believe that free markets and specifically choice and competition have done more to raise people out of poverty and to increase people's standard of living than any government program ever has and that any government program ever will. There are certain pockets of our economy and of our society that are shielded away and protected from choice and competition. And to the extent that they are,